What's up, y'all? Your resident CityCast Chicago theater lover is back with another recommendation and world premiere. This time, I'm talking about Timeline Theater's homegrown play, Black Sunday. It follows a Texas family trying to save their farm during the Great American Dust Bowl of the 1930s. To say it was rough is an understatement. Now, while some family members want to pack up for California, some are still holding on to hope, even as one of the country's most destructive dust storms of all time is fast approaching. Take a remarkable trip back in time to witness this haunting story of climate change, migration, and family. The play is running now through June 29th. For tickets and more information, visit timelinetheater.com. Today on CityCast Chicago, spring session for state lawmakers ends this week. We take the Hey Chicago weekly news quiz, and I saw my first cicadas. Joining me to break it all down is executive producer Simone Alisea. It's Tuesday, May 21st. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Good morning, Simone. How you feeling?
I'm all right, Jacoby. How are you?
I'm doing good. I had a good weekend, long walk outside, good weather, tried some new restaurants, saw a rooftop movie. Gee, I watched Friday at the Rooftop Cinema Club in Fulton, and I've seen the movie, 500 times in my life, start to finish. I knew all of the lines, but apparently there's like a slightly extended version of the movie that I've never seen before. And so there were moments when I was doing the sequence of dialogue and a new part would come on that I'd never seen. I was like, oh my God, this feels like a completely new experience. It was more fun than I even thought it was going to be. So I'm down for Rooftop Cinemas if people haven't checked them out in Chicago. For people who might be new to the podcast, every Tuesday, the producers and myself, we sit down and we look at some Chicago stories, talk about some things we saw on the internet. And today, later on, we're going to take one of the weekly news quizzes from our newsletter, Hey Chicago. But Simone, let's start up top. It's the last week of the spring session for Illinois lawmakers. Hundreds of bills, y'all, have already passed, but there are some big things still on the agenda. They like to call this last week the sprint towards summer break for lawmakers. So Simone, let's start there. What are folks still working on this session?
Yeah, so I think the big one is the budget.
Yep.
Right. This is how are we going to pay for everything that Illinois is doing, right? Governor Pritzker put out a $52.7 billion proposal.
Ooh.
Right now, the biggest debates are over taxes. There is some revenue raising that is happening in this budget. Governor Pritzker has proposed lowering how much corporations can write off in losses on their state income taxes. So it would just mean that those corporations would then get taxed more, right? And then also raising taxes on sports books, on sports gambling. There has been some pushback to these. A lot of Democrats are up for election this year in Springfield.
Folks are scared of taxes.
People do not like it when you raise taxes. And so, reports say that Pritzker has agencies preparing for cuts in order to, because he's going to sign a balanced budget. The budget has to be balanced. Theoretically, this has to be decided by Friday. That is the deadline that has been set for session. However, that's a self-imposed deadline that lawmakers set for themselves. And, if it doesn't all get signed and sealed by Friday, we're not looking at like a big shutdown or anything like that.
Exactly. I was reacting to that nearly $53 billion budget. I quickly looked up. It looks like our budget is only like the 12th highest in the country amongst states. So pretty high, top 15, but it is not up there with the biggest budgets, obviously the most populated states. But California, $286 billion budget, G.
That's a big state. They got a lot of people. Ooh,
I know. But just to see the numbers laid out in front of you, it kind of puts 53 billion into perspective. Obviously, one thing we were talking about last week was CTU, CPS came together to go down to Springfield lobbying for more money. So that's still up. What does that fight look like right now?
Right. So in Pritzker's current proposal, statewide schools are getting about $350 million. CTU and CPS, as you mentioned, have come together to ask for at least $550 million statewide, which is only about half of what they say Chicago schools need to be fully funded based on the state's evidence-based funding formula. Definitely go back and listen to that conversation that we had on Friday with Ariane Nettles and Heather Sharon to kind of break down what is at play here. This is something that has been a source of tension for Chicago schools for a long time. How much money is Chicago schools getting from the state? The state is supposed to be funding schools, equitably all across Illinois, but Chicago schools, again, based on their own formulas.
I was going to say, based on their own numbers.
Yeah, is not getting the amount of money that Chicago schools needs. That said, Chicago, the city, has a stake in this too, because they're currently in negotiations with the teachers union right now, right? And the teachers union, as unions are wont to do, asking for more stuff, more money. There's always this question of how is the city going to pay for that? The hope is maybe if the state ponies up more money, makes it easier to pay for things like that, among other things, right? Among all the other things that Chicago public schools need. How likely is it that they're gonna get to that $550 million figure? I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical. Are they going to get more than 350 million? I don't know about that either. I don't know how much.
I think one of the things that Heather and Ariane pointed out in our conversation last Friday is we've been well conditioned in the last few years when we look at Chicago schools to expect a battle between City Hall and the teachers union and this sort of push and pull. And it seems like we're now gearing up towards that being more leveled at the state, which is also still executing its power maneuvers in terms of, we were recently covering, imposing a stronger school moratorium because they're like, hey, Chicago is going to get a fully elected school board. Let's sort of hold on what they can and can't do until that fully comes in. So seeing sort of when and where the state chooses to step in, there's a lot of room for increased tension in the coming years.
Yeah, that moratorium that you mentioned is still up for debate. And it's a really interesting debate because, right, Chicago Public Schools has had been this moratorium on closing schools, largely following the closure of 50 schools in 2013 and then another set of closures as well. And initially the moratorium was like, hey, closing these schools was really harmful to Chicago neighborhoods. And there was a lot of backlash against it. Let's put a pause on this. Now, the debate around extending that moratorium to 2027 is a little bit different because now you have a school board that is trying to prioritize neighborhood schools and is pulling away from charter selective enrollment schools.
It feels like in some ways right the wrongs or at least be more equitable moving forward to how black and brown, largely black and brown schools and largely black and brown neighborhoods are funded, resourced.
So sort of moving away from a model that is primarily focused on school choice, right? That is prioritizing that. However, you've got a lot of people in those selective enrollment charter schools who are seeing this, and that's raising a lot of alarms, and that's getting a lot of pushback from Chicagoans who really feel that these charter schools, selective enrollment schools, they don't want those schools to then suffer. And so the state has now come in and said, okay, well, Chicago's supposed to be getting this fully elected school board in 2027. Shouldn't they make the decision? Why do we have this sort of lame duck-ish, fully appointed school board making these really, really big decisions during in a year where we're supposed to be voting in half of an elected school board? Let's just wait. Let's just wait until 2027 and let the school board take care of this. But again, kind of coming at it from a very different angle than I think the moratorium had been placed in previously.
Remember when the school board conversation was happening? We were like, how is that transition board going to be looked at and treated? Will their power be respected? Will their decisions be respected? And then, in some cases they have been. And then in others, it's like, hey, you're not the real board yet. And so seeing, again, how lawmakers are navigating around that It's been a learning process for me. It really has been.
I think it's been a learning process for everybody, Jacoby. We've got a new mayor. I think it's been a learning process for the people running for school board. I think it's been a learning process for all the new people he appointed to the school board. I think everybody's learning.
What are some other things taking place down in Springfield right now?
So sort of related to the budget, but not really related. I got to talk about at the Bears Stadium. So there's no actual legislation on this yet. Like, it's not like lawmakers are voting on this week.
But everybody's having conversations and behind the scenes.
There's a lot of talk about this. You've got the Bears out in Springfield trying to convince Pritzker and Democrats to, sign on board to this stadium proposal, this lakefront stadium proposal in Chicago. Pritzker has come out pretty explicitly and been like, "This is a non-starter. This is not. I don't see how this is going to happen." The Bears seem to think that they have to get this done in the spring. Again, there's no actual legislation,
and again, between their current lease and how long this there does feel like they've put a timeline on this. Like, they've created a lot of urgency around this conversation that even I don't think existed around the early pitches of Arlington Heights.
Exactly. Could they pick this up in the fall veto session? I think by then we'll have a better sense of like, what are they actually proposing and what is actually going on paper. And also they'll have a whole summer to lobby lawmakers. So the election will have passed at that point. So
they'll have some training camp clips to be like, hey, look what
Caleb
we're
Williams
in.
gets a chance to shine. You know what I mean? Like, anything could happen between now and the fall veto session. But they're currently talking about it in Springfield, and it is taking up airtime at the very least. Among other things, there's other stuff that's still going on. They're talking about healthcare costs. There's a lot of different bills related to insurance and healthcare. They are still talking about consolidating the CTA with other regional transit agencies. We talked about that a couple weeks ago now, I think, and kind of how that would work.
Like, as a solution to the forthcoming fiscal cliff that a lot of these agencies are facing.
Right, exactly. And so those are still up for debate. Again, whether they happen by May 24, it's tough to say. The less stuff that happens in the spring, the more stuff that people are going to be pushing for in the fall session. And that's just kind of the nature of legislating. But the budget is probably the big one. That's something they have to do, at the very least before the end of June.
We talked at the very top. Hundreds of bills have already been passed. While there's still so much important legislation on the table, they've already got some things headed to the governor's desk.
One that a lot of people are talking about is adjustments to Illinois' biometric privacy law. So we have talked about this a lot in our newsletter. We've talked about it on the show. People might remember a couple years back when you got that $400 check from Facebook. And that was because there was a settlement involving Illinois' biometric privacy lawsuit. There have been lots of settlements like this in Illinois. That was one of the biggest ones.
Google, Snapchat.
Illinois has one of the strongest protections on the books in the country around this, which is why we're seeing so many of these settlements here. But this year, after a lot of pressure from different companies, not just tech companies, but even a company like White Castle,
a lawsuit involving White Castle, who
ran into issues around this. Legislation has been passed to favor the companies a little bit more, right? Adjustments that would lessen the damages. It kind of counts the violations differently.
Yeah. Like White Castle could have been on the hook for $17 billion. Instead, they settled for $9 million. And so it's like adjusting how many violations can be racked up on a single person.
Yeah, and I mean that settlement happened before the new adjustments were passed, but yeah.
But it was sort of with that precedent they used to argue this. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That case sort of highlighted this, like, hey, can you really, every single time that a worker scans their finger multiple times a day, can you really be fined for every single instance of that? Is that what we're really talking about here? That kind of thing. And then the other thing is adding language, sort of kind of protecting the companies a little more in terms of liability, specifically around companies are supposed to ask you for consent to allow them to collect this certain amount kinds of data. And sort of they have included an option for consent that is by electronic signature. And the definition of that is pretty broad. So it kind of helps protect the companies so that they are less liable to be sued in the event that they are collecting this data.
Yeah, we knew this was coming in. The pressure from these companies to try and wrangle in this law was coming. And it seems like it's gotten through the lawmakers and it's headed to the governor's desk. Yo, for everybody listening, I wanted to remind y'all of something. The City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Office of Labor Standards oversees Chicago's landmark labor laws through engagement and enforcement. What does that mean for you? Well, Chicago's labor laws include minimum wage, paid sick leave, fair work week, wage theft, contracts for domestic care workers, and anti-retaliation. And even more, on July 1st, 2024, the following ordinances and update will go into effect. Number 1, Chicago Paid Leave and Paid Sick and Safe Leave Ordinance. Number 2, a 5-year phase out of the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. And number 3, the annual minimum wage increase. Remember, the Office of Labor Standards processes complaints, conducts investigations, mediates disputes, directs settlement proceedings, issues violations, and if necessary, seeks licensure discipline against employers. For more information, visit www.chicago.gov/labor standards. And if you need to file a complaint, call 311 for Chicago labor law violations. A few weeks ago, our newsletter editor, Sydney Madden, introduced a weekly news quiz, meaning every Friday in Hey Chicago, the questions are pulled right out of the headlines and stories covered not only in the newsletter, but also here on the podcast. I recently took the quiz and, my results weren't that bad. I wanted to compare them to the other people who took them. But Simone, let's go through some of the questions from the most recent quiz.
Yeah, so I help edit the news quiz, so I already knew what the questions were beforehand, and I know what the answers are. But I wanted to start with a question that you got wrong, actually.
The only question I got wrong.
The only question that you got wrong, which is new COVID-19 variants are spreading across the country. What is their nickname? Options were Centaurus, Kraken, Flirt, or Pirola.
I had no idea, I'm going to be honest. Completely escaped me. So I just went with Kraken because it sounds terrifying.
Because it's the coolest name. Yeah. It is the coolest name, I think. Mm-hmm. No, it's actually Flirt. And it had
like a capital FL, didn't it?
Yeah, so it's capital FL, lowercase I, capital RT.
Okay.
And I guess it's pulled from like different... It's like a group of variants of COVID-19. So it's like pulled from the different names of the variants. I should have known
just based on how it was written out that it wasn't a typo.
Well, and it looks like our readers certainly knew it because 78% of readers got that question correct. Either they read the newsletter and they saw it, or they managed to make that connection.
I will say, Sydney makes it very clear. It's an open book test. If you want to challenge yourself by taking it straight up, feel free. You can see your results after you take it, but it is open book. But I think she just has to write that in there just to be nice. I think that the goal is for you to just do the damn thing straight up.
No, I think you should absolutely go back and look up. Use the tools that are available to you.
You should, but that feels like it's going to take a long time. You got to pop out the quiz, go Google coronavirus.
How important is it for you to be right, I guess, is the real question. How important is it for you to do well on this quiz?
In the words of some of our listeners who heard the Mayor Brandon Johnson episode, grades don't matter. They don't matter.
A question that I really liked that I thought was quite elegant, and I am really pleased at how well people did on it. Last week, of course, a lot of people saw the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis. And so the question was, why were Chicagoans able to witness the Northern Lights? Is it A, proximity to the North Pole, B, a geomagnetic storm, C, the upcoming summer solstice, or D, light pollution cleared up?
This is one I did hear in the news because it was everywhere, and it was a geomagnetic storm. Now, obviously, some of those other, like the light pollution might have impacted your ability to see it, but the reason more people were able to see it was because of the storm. Again, I have no idea how that actually works, but I did pick up on the buzzwords throughout the week.
I also can't, like, I was sent an article about it and I read about it. And so, like, I have like a vague,
I tried to learn about it,
the
but
sun, like there's like a sun thing and a sun thing. And like, I can see it in my brain. I know it's a space thing, but I can't really explain it. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. I also watched the X-Men 97 series on Disney Plus. In the last few episodes, Magneto basically, I don't know if he shut off the Earth's magnetic field, something like that. So when I try to remember what I read, I get it mixed up with the episodes and I don't remember what is what at that point. So I did get that one right, though.
My favorite answer was proximity to the North Pole because, of course, the reason that they're called the Northern Lights is because they are typically seen in the far northern climes of the world. I thought that was a great red herring of an answer, although no one went for it. 91% of our readers got that right. So they were also reading the news and did not fall for it.
I love this great TikTok that was like, when did we start calling the Northern Lights by its government name? I thought that was hilarious.
When it started appearing in Mexico, that's when we started doing that.
Great response.
So the question that this was a diabolical question.
Yeah,
this
y'all
was
some
awful.
tricksters,
This was
G.
brutal. This one is brutal. The question that most people got wrong this week marked 1 year since Mayor Brandon Johnson was inaugurated as Chicago's 46th mayor. That was a true or false question, and 89% of readers said it was true, when in fact it is false.
They stopped reading the question after they got through the first part. They was just like, oh, I know what this is. Boom. They ain't get down to that number.
Brutal. You have to read the whole question. Mayor Brandon Johnson was inaugurated as Chicago's 57th mayor 1 year ago.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, Simone, who the 46th mayor of Chicago was?
Oh, almost assuredly not, because that is more than like 6 mayors ago. So that is going to be tough for me. Let me think. Johnson's 57, 56 is Lightfoot, 55 is Emanuel, 54 is Daley, 53 is Sawyer.
Sawyer before Daley. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then 52 is Washington. No, because he had someone else. So, okay, there was someone else between. It was the dude who took over after Washington died, whose name I can't remember.
David Orr.
So 51 is Washington. 50 is Byrne. 49 is Blandick.
Yeah.
48 is Daley. 47. No, this is where it starts to get
yes, of course.
A little tough. This is I don't even know if I could name. I can name only like probably like 3 or 4 mayors, and they're all like from like the 1800s. You know what I mean? Like
before Daley was Martin Kennelly, and before that, the 46th mayor was Edward Kelly.
Kelly. Oh, that one I should have gotten, actually. That one's a name I should know. Okay. So yeah, I could not tell you. But the reason that also might trip people up is because Joe Biden is the 46th president. So it might be a number that people are seeing around the news. That one was really brutal. When Sid wrote it, I was like, a lot of people are going to get that one wrong. Yeah, it was a tough one. We've done this quiz a couple times now. Keep an eye out for it. It comes out on Fridays. But this week, we're going to do something a little bit different because we have been playing with a tool. If you know the game and New York Times Connections, where you like group different things, we are going to do Chicago versions of the New York Times connections. We've created a few puzzles. We found a program that can do it. So make sure you're subscribed to Hey Chicago. You can sign up at chicago.citycast.fm so you can play along and let us know how you did. And let us know if these questions are too easy, too hard, you want more of them. You can always email us, chicago@citycast.fm.
One more thing before I let you get out of here, Simone. We've been talking about cicadas for, it feels like months and months and months now. And while I don't live in a neighborhood where a ton of them are popping out, I went out to see my homeboy Darius out in Homewood, and his backyard is now got the cicadas popping out. So I went out, I took a couple of pictures of a few small cicadas on the trees. I was close enough where I couldn't tell. I don't think they had come out of their shell yet. They hadn't done that process. Have you seen any over the last week or so, Simone?
I haven't seen any. I have not seen one. I have not heard one. I am seeing the pictures popping up. People have seen them in the city, I know, because I've seen some of the coverage, and then I'm also seeing the pictures from people out in the burbs. I'm waiting. I kind of want to hear them. I'd like to just like know that they're here. I don't know. They're bigger than I thought they would be too.
Yeah, no, they big. Yeah, I saw two very large cicadas.
Yeah, I would like to see them, but I'm sure they will come by. But yeah, if you've got some in your yard, text us a picture, 773-780-0246. I don't know why I'm asking. I actually don't like seeing pictures of bugs, but I feel like this is a collective
FOMO
experience.
Situation for you. Yeah,
it's just like this is a thing that we're all gonna experience. So we might as well do it together. And if you're gonna cook with cicadas too, we did that episode with David Hammond last week. On how to cook with cicadas. Show us pictures of that too. Give us your cicada pictures. We want to see them.
Simone, another fantastic Tuesday with you. We looked at some of the things going on down at the spring session with Illinois lawmakers. We took the Hey Chicago weekly news quiz, and we lobbied y'all to send us some of y'all cicada pictures. Shout out to our executive producer, Simone Alisea. Always a fun time, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
And before I let the rest of y'all go, I got a quick favor to ask. CityCast is doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help us out if you took it. You can do it at citycast.fm/survey. It's only going to take you about 7 minutes. Plus, survey takers will be also eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and CityCast Chicago swag. That's citycast.fm/survey. Even if you took it last year, we would be grateful if you took it again, since we can't use last year's data anymore. So what was that link again? Right. citycast.fm/survey. And of course, we appreciate you making time. Hey, it's a fair trade. You take the survey, I give you some good news. Dim Sum and Drag is celebrating AAPI Heritage Month with the Mulan Immersive Dining Experience. Join your favorite Asian drag performers as the story of Mulan is brought to life for Memorial Day weekend at Fiorama in Uptown. As always, we appreciate you for listening. We're going to be back here bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.
Yeah, I actually want to... Sorry, I've got a truck with bad brakes who is stopping outside my window. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, those things are not good at all.
That's a garbage truck. That really worries me.